news headline this morning with the historic former United States President Donald Trump, who has been convicted of falsifying business records in the first criminal trial of a former president. He was convicted on all 34 counts in the hush money trial. Trump is accused of concealing a payment made to buy the former adult film star's silence shortly before the 2016 election. Sentencing will take place on 11 July at 10 a.m. local time, that's 3 p.m. Nigerian time, and the court will order a probation period for Trump. Speaking after the verdict, Trump calls the verdict a disgrace and attacks Justice Merchan, who presided over the case. After several minutes of almost unbearable silence on the
Trump organization.
Madam Attorney General, you've never been attacked in his testimony.
The court was the fraudster in this case that he made. This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. But the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man. And it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end and we'll win, because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now, from prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists, and they're taking over our country. We have a country that's in big trouble, but this was a rigged decision right from day one with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never.
After several minutes of almost unbearable silence on Thursday in Donald Trump's hush money criminal case, the court officer's voice rang out loud and clear through the courtroom. She asked the jury to read the verdict, and in a steady, even tone, the foreman began. A wave of guilty verdicts washed over Trump as he sat motionless at the defense table. At each guilty, he did not flinch or react physically. As the verdict was read on Thursday in the courtroom, it felt like the air had turned to stone. Sitting silent and still at the defense table, Trump kept his lips pursed as his lawyers, Todd Blanche and Emil Bov, on either side of him glanced sternly towards the judge. As each juror verbally confirmed the decision to convict him, Trump turned his head in their direction and followed their faces one by one as they answered. His pursed expressions remained unchanged as his attorneys pleaded with the judge for acquittal, claiming Trump's former fixer had committed perjury with his damning testimony on the stand. Following the landmark conviction of former President Donald Trump in the hush money trial in New York, Manhattan District, District Attorney Alvin Bragg on Thursday expressed his gratitude to the jury and said he did his job. Bragg didn't weigh in on whether he will ask the judge for a prison sentence, saying his team will speak instead in court filings. All right,
jurors vowed to make a decision based on the evidence and the law, and the evidence and the law alone. Their deliberations led them to a unanimous conclusion, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the defendant, Donald J. Trump, is guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree to conceal a scheme to corrupt the 2016 election. And while this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors, by following the facts and the law and doing so without fear or favor.
Well, Alvin Bragg can brag that he's able to get this conviction, and one which he had been, very determined about in terms of his work towards his Dr. Bati. Historic, monumental, some of the words that have been used to describe the verdict of the court.
Well, I mean, the verdict is historic to the extent that President Donald Trump is the first former president in American history to be convicted. But it is not correct to refer to him at this moment as a convicted felon. That phrase will become appropriate after July 11, when the Supreme Court of Manhattan, sits at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, on that particular day. So what is next? Now, he has been convicted for falsifying business records in a transaction, in a hush-up money transaction with Stormy Daniels, an adult porn star who has proven to have, in fact, introduced a storm into President Trump's, political career and persona within the public space. But what is next? Now, sentencing is on July 11, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Before then, Trump will be interviewed by a probation officer who will prepare pre-sentencing report. The pre-sentencing report will, focus mainly on his personal history and criminal record, if there is any. Number three, his lawyers are going to see if they can push, the sentencing period beyond July 11, if possible, until after November 5 presidential election. Where will Judge Merchan allow that? Well, maybe not, maybe not. And then, of course, it is certain that whatever happens on July 11, his lawyers will go on appeal. Already, Judge Merchan has asked them to file their motions by June 13, so which means that July 11 may come to pass. But definitely, they will go on appeal. If the case goes on appeal, they could be at it for the next 1 year, by which time the election will have been won and lost. If Donald Trump wins the election, well, nothing will happen, because as president, he will enjoy immunity. Again, as president, he will not be able to give himself a state pardon, because it's a case in a state court. It's not in a federal court. But in any case, what is more important is that the American Constitution does not say if you're a convicted felon, you cannot be president. What the American Constitution says is that you have to be a natural-born citizen of the United States. You have to be at least 35 years old, and you must have lived in the United States for at least 14 years. That's what the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution says. It doesn't say anything about whether you've been convicted or not. However, President Trump, the question is, will this affect his chances in the presidential election? July 11 is just a few days away from the Milwaukee convention, of the Republican Party, where Trump will be declared, the candidate of the party of the GOP. But, so nothing is going to change even in that regard. Will it affect his chances in the elections? Maybe not. Maybe, in fact, this conviction, would, in fact, rally his base and even brighten his chances. The issue may be with swing voters, undecided voters, who may moralize and say, well, don't let me vote for him because he's been convicted. Again, he has two other cases. There is a case in Washington, D.C. There's also another case in Atlanta, Georgia, both relating to his role in the assault on the Capitol in January 2020 after the elections. So there's that other case there. So at the moral level, yes, maybe some people will moralize, but significantly, this is not likely to affect his chances in the election. Each of the 34 counts carries a 4-year sentence, a maximum of 4-year sentence. Well, but everything is at the discretion of Judge Merchan, who had said in May that, in fact, he had no intentions of committing President Donald Trump to prison. He said it will be the last thing that I will do. He said so in May. So what is he likely to do? Well, it's likely he has the options of fines. He has options of probation. He has a number of other options. But, you know, maybe we also not rule out imprisonment. But even if he says he's going to imprison him, it will range between 1.5 years to 4 years. But he himself had said in May that he's not going to do that. When President Trump was violating the gag order, and he was very aggressive towards the prosecutors, towards the judge himself, that he kept attacking. And even yesterday, he still insists that he's innocent. He still insists that the entire process was rigged. The entire process took 2.5 months in the Lower Manhattan court. And then he says he is looking forward to November 5, when the people of the United States, the real jury, will issue a verdict in terms of his political fortunes. But whatever it is, I really don't think that this is going to have any significant impact on the political process. It may not even affect Trump at all, because as I said, the Constitution is very clear. You can be a convicted felon and be a president. However, the same U.S. Constitution, it says you can't commit the American president to prison, because that would affect his functions, you know, as president of the United States. So these are the key issues involved, in my view, in this matter.
Right, yeah, I mean, just a few more things. We saw that video where President Donald H. Trump, was responding following his conviction or his guilty verdict by a 12-man jury in Manhattan. He said it was rigged. He described it as a disgraceful trial. He asserted the fact that he was an innocent man, or he's an innocent man. The whole country is being rigged, and this was done by the Biden administration. It was almost like he was already campaigning in terms of speaking to his very strong base to keep them confident in his own personal adjudication of innocence, and also the fact that he was going to fight this. Then the fact that he was also referring to some of the ills or the failings, in his opinion, of the Biden administration in terms of speaking to migration. He said, our nation is a mess, millions of people pouring in. And then he goes on to classify the millions of people pouring in as from prisons, mental institutions, and says some of them were terrorists. And I don't know if this is fact-based or if former President Donald Trump has his numbers to prove some of these statements he's made, but these are the kind of things that galvanize his base to want to vote for him, to want a change in America, to want to make America great again, as was his slogan in the 2015-2016 elections. And so what we'll then see play out perhaps would be then a test of loyalty and a showing of the fact that they're going to stand by their main man, their main candidates come elections on the 5th of November. But beyond that, it's not all Uhuru for him, because there's some swing votes who are said to be about 50-60% of them saying that it might affect how they vote for him based on this particular conviction. And so it's still not, it's still not a clear road for him. Is this still a strong candidate? Absolutely. Republican Party still going to go for him? Absolutely. As Dr. Bato already mentioned, this doesn't in any way affect his chances on the polls. It doesn't even affect his chances of voting in itself, despite the fact that he's a convicted felon, even though not